Welcome to the channel and welcome to the show. If you don't already know, my name is Reni. I'm a pagan from the beautiful country of the Netherlands, and today we're discussing kneeling. Should pagans kneel to their gods? I found this is quite a hot button issue for pagans at the moment. In this video I will discuss it. I will let you know the pros of why you should. I will let you know the cons of why you shouldn't, and I of course will share with you my insights in this matter, because I've been thinking about this for quite a long time. So let's get into it. At first glance, it shouldn't be such a controversial issue. It shouldn't. Because if you go and you look at the source material, for example, if you read the Icelandic sagas, there are several accounts where somebody is punished, physically beaten or thrown in jail for not paying respects to the gods, for not bending the knee. And besides the Icelandic sagas, there are other examples as well. So if the sources say that in olden pagan times in Nordic countries it was, well, it wasn't mandatory, but like if you didn't do it, you faced punishment. So if it was like that in the olden days, why do we have so much trouble kneeling to our gods in the here and now? I've been giving it some thought, and I think I know why. Because most of us come from a Christian background. And Christianity, there's a lot of kneeling. A lot of you getting on your knees. Same, by the way, with Islam, with Muslims. I think with Islam even more so. For me, Christianity and Islam are kind of the same. Islam is Christianity on steroids. That's all it is. And that also goes for the kneeling part, because like Muslims have to kneel 5 times a day. 5 times a day, making themselves small in front of their God while saying Allahu Akbar, God is great. That's actually a manipulation technique. Well, it's a way to program your subconscious. You're 5 times a day constantly saying God is great, God is great, God is great, God is great, while making yourself small. So you understand God is great, I'm small, God is great, I'm small. So you see yourself as small and God is great. If you really see yourself like that on a subconscious level, that means you're less likely to go against the will of your God, or you're very unlikely to go against the will of what they say your God is. Because Christianity and Islam, well, there's this famous quote by Jung, says, organized religion is there to keep you from having a direct relationship with the divine. Because there's always a priest, there's always an imam, there's always somebody helping you to interpret and telling you what you should get out of that experience. And in paganism, we don't have that. It's possible to have this direct relationship with the divine. There's nobody guiding you or censoring you or manipulating you while you do that. So I've said, like Islam, there's a lot of kneeling, and that's kind of manipulation. And it's a successful manipulation, and I'll tell you why in a bit. But also Christianity is the same. There's less kneeling, but the same principle, because every church is kind of the same in the sense that there's this big hall where everybody sits, and there's this place where the priest gives his sermon, and usually there's this very high tower, and there's this beautiful stained colored windows where the power of the sun comes through and it just illuminates the whole area, because you're in this smaller area with like not as high, with a small roof over it, and the priest is high. So you get subconsciously that same feeling. I'm small, God great. I'm small, God great. I'm small, God great. Islam only exit out 5 times a day. In Christianity, they give you that feeling while you in the church. And by the way, the justice system often operates in a similar matter. Because if you've ever been to a courthouse, I've been to a courthouse in Holland, in Den Haag. Not for myself, by the way. I've never been charged with anything and never like prosecuted for anything. Just backing up a friend in a story. But over there it was, and I feel like it's the same everywhere. You have the judge who's up high and you're down here. It slopes even. So you subconsciously get the feeling he's high, you're small. So you subconsciously just shut the fuck up, because you're not shit, you're shit, you're not anything. And I think that's helpful because you get a sentence there and a lot of people get pissed off. So it's nice to program them in a way so they can receive the sentence without too much trouble and bloodshed. So that's the kneeling part. And that's why we don't like to kneel, because we as pagans often come from a Christian background, and we subconsciously or consciously somewhere we felt that we were being manipulated when we were told to kneel. So we don't want any part of that anymore. We're done with being manipulated by a priest or an imam. We want to have our own personal relationship with the divine. That's why we became pagans. That's why we long for that spiritual freedom. And one of the reasons why that manipulation of getting on your knees and making you feel small is successful, because it's true. There's no lie in what they tell you. When they tell you that God is great, that gods are great, that your God is great and you're small, that's truth. I'm not one of those people in the pagan community who speaks like I work with the gods. I don't like saying that. You don't ever hear me say that. Because the gods are not my dogs who come when I whistle. When I speak and when I pray, I speak with the utmost respect, because I know there's a large difference between a God and me. We are not the same. So I stay humble. So it's a truth. It's a manipulation technique. You can, if I give an example, if I want to manipulate my girlfriend, say I want to try to do that, what manipulators often do is they find the truth. Like, the truth is that I do a lot of things for my girlfriend, and then I constantly emphasize first a bit and then more and more and more, emphasize all the things that I do for her. So I make her feel a certain way. And all the things I tell her are 100% the truth. Listen, I do the dishes for you, I bring you flowers, I give you compliments, I listen, I do all these things that I do for you. But what I forget to mention is the other side of the story. Because the other side of the story is she also does a lot for me. So it's not lying, it's telling half the truth. It happens all the time. The media also does this a lot. Sometimes the news will tell you a truth, but they forget to tell you the other half of that truth. Like, a truth that is often told in the news nowadays is like, if you're a native European, they tell you your ancestors, they were owners or slaves, or they condoned slavery. So you should feel very guilty about that. And the fact that our ancestors could have held slaves or condoned slavery might have been true. There was slavery, and I think that's a terrible thing. I think we all agree now, but back then we didn't know. Nobody knew. But the thing that they don't tell you is that other races all over the world also had slaves, that the Islamic world has more slaves than Europe ever had. But they leave that part out because they want to make you feel a certain way so they can manipulate you with that feeling later on. It's all the same stuff. Me trying to manipulate my girlfriend, or going to church, or watching the news. It's the same shit. Okay. So we've done with all with that manipulation stuff. I think we all felt that we were being manipulated, and we don't want any part of that anymore. And I understand that completely. That's how I feel too. But after thinking about it for a while, I asked myself some very profound questions. Say I stopped manipulating my girlfriend. Say I proposed to my girlfriend, and I got on one knee and I pulled out a ring. Does that automatically mean that I'm being manipulated? Does that automatically mean that I am less than her? No, it doesn't. When soldiers in the army honor their fallen comrades, they get down on one knee. Do they do that Because they are less than their fallen comrades? You answer that question. I think because of our previous experiences, we've been hurt. And we don't want anything to do with that spiritual manipulation. We don't want anything to do with this middleman between us and our own divine experience. So we say, no kneeling! My gods don't want me to kneel! But as shown in this experience, in this example, it doesn't automatically mean that you're being manipulated. And it is historically a way to show your respect. Now, when I gave that example of manipulation, that they only show one side of the story, the one side of the story is the gods are the gods. They are not human. We are not the same. We're not on the same level. So you should kneel to your gods. But the other side of the story is, and I shared a meme on this on my Instagram, which I think is beautiful. I see if I can plaster it here or plaster it in the thumbnail, where it said, don't be afraid of the gods. Because they are not only gods, they are kin as well. And that is true. Without the gods, we wouldn't be here. Without Odin, Vili, and Ve making the world, there would not be a world. Without Odin giving us his breath and giving us life, we wouldn't be alive. So it makes sense to get on one knee for the God that gave us life, at least. And it's true. Two sides of the story. Divine is also inside of ourselves. But it's also outside of ourselves, and it's also bigger than us. And I believe that if I want to make that comparison to the big two, to the Pepsi and Coke of spirituality, to the Christianity and Islam, I believe, and maybe I'm not knowledgeable about Islam enough, that there are basically no references of something divine being inside of yourself. And even in Christianity, they are very scarce. I believe there's a quote in the Bible where Jesus said, he did some miracles, and he said, greater miracles still will be done by all of you. Which kind of alludes to the fact that there's a divine spark in me that is also in you. But that gets downplayed in the church a lot, and there's not a lot of that in the Bible that didn't make it in the, there's not a lot of that in the King James Version of the Bible. So if you see gods just merely as symbols, which you can, realize that there's a part of you, of your humanness, that is divine. And the gods are the closest thing we have that reminds us of our higher selves. So if you have trouble kneeling to the gods, just see them as a representation of the highest part in you. That's all I gotta say. Don't start kneeling because I told you so. I'm not a pagan pope. I'm just a guy sitting here on a bench in the forest somewhere in the east of Holland. Thank you for sticking out to the end. Make up your own mind. Just know that I don't think there's a shame in kneeling. And maybe it's just an American thing, because in Europe I don't really get that a lot, but online I see a lot of Americans going like, no, I don't want to, because I think America was founded on one principle, and that principle is fuck you. That's the principle. They don't like to be ruled over by anybody. Maybe that's why they're extra antagonistic about kneeling. In my opinion, nothing wrong with it. Just remember, when you kneel to a god, but you also kneel to your kin. That's all. Ga met de goden. See you next week.